settled. I remember Susan saying that with building on community and PPP loans. She was like trying really hard to secure PPP loans for some of the people that they work with. And she's like, I feel like I'm doing this, and then every other organization is doing this. So wouldn't it be helpful if we could all like learn from each other, at least communicate a little bit?
But then it's just a lot of
Consolidation seems scary. I think.
well, it takes us but if you want to impact, it's like we're trying to promote internally in our organization of strategic abandonment. Like, what are the things we can do?
Yeah.
Because it's mission just taking us.
It's a responsible thing to do in many ways.
But it's hard as a nonprofit. I know it especially it's hard. You kind of go where the resources are. So yeah, it's very interesting time. And now there's like more resources than ever, and yet they're never access. So it's an interesting time.
Is 4CT still doing stuff?
So they shifted their model.
They did.
We were involved with them when they first launched, and then
They came in real hot.
Yeah. And I was saying to somebody, just because we're talking about some other coalition building efforts that are very specific, discrete issues. And I was, well, why is it? For this, what that looked like is just to release that. So
From like drinking.
right. So and there's a will, but,
Yeah.
and if you get the right issue that connects the right people, you could raise that money quickly, and then you would have this run. But their objectives are different. They're actually trying to spend the money as quickly.
Yeah.
So you kind of
And the need was so urgent.
yeah. So, but then they shifted and they funded us, we did a peer mentorship program for recent graduates. That was and that wasn't very fast. They were like, faster turnaround. It's not a free ride, these are people. Right. Places, and they were already struggling before their business, and now they're trying to figure out what they can do in their life.
And the concept of a career pathway, I think, is more of a journey than
Right.
else.
It's like a Band-Aid. This was like kind of like a Band-Aid.
That's way too far.
54 hours ago, just
Way too
I
far,
kind of just
okay?
said,
It's,
yeah.
no, way too far.
Not like a reaction. And anything in the future.
No, gotta be way closer.
Yeah.
Like that model. You really want that model. You really should do it here.
Okay.
It's about the community.
And you don't want to be in these guys' way.
So sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good, no worries.
Yeah. And you really want to shoot it, but you want the camera part?
Mm-hmm.
It's two, can you zoom in or no?
No, wait. Let's cover.
So you should bring it way closer. Okay, that's what you
Okay.
need to do.
Let's see. How's that?
Okay, you don't want all this extra white
Yeah.
space. Okay, so you just bring it closer. Although you need the faces. You really need to be lifting this.
Something.
Higher.
Okay.
But it's not the end of the world. That's not that bad. Yes.
I might
So ready to start. I just put my pen.
Hi, Shayna McFadden. Nice to meet you. Good. Little Chris.
What time is it?
It's 30.
Nothing too flashy.
How are you? Good.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Openshaw. I'm the CEO of Girls with Impact and sister Women with Impact. And joining me today is Treasurer Sean Wooden, CBIA CEO Chris DiPentima, I messed that up, right? DiPentima, thank you. Shannon Merrimon with Ready CT and Shayna McPadden with JP Morgan Chase. Women, as you know, have been called the shock absorbers of COVID-19. And if we look at the impact, it's been tremendous because they make up 50 to 70% of some of our big industries like food service, education, and healthcare. And when we look at the impact on their economic lives, it's been profound. In fact, 68% of Connecticut's women say that their ability to work has been impaired. The same number, 68%, say their family's education has been impaired. And when we look at women of color, the impact has been even more egregious, with 50% of women of color saying that they've reported a decrease in their monthly income. And so the question that we as leaders decided to look at is how can we help our women of Connecticut climb out of this pandemic and really get onto a path of economic security. We decided, myself along with leaders from throughout the state, to embark on an effort called the a post-COVID economic recovery for Connecticut's women, to look at specific actions that we could take to help get them the kind of training they need and to move them forward. So what we're going to do in the next few minutes is take a look at the findings from the survey of statewide leaders and then some specific recommendations, and then we're going to hear from some of the folks who have joined me today. I want to give a special thanks to JP Morgan Chase and Fairfield County's Community Foundation for making this report possible. So now let me just show you some of the findings. These are some of the participants, by the way. These are people in education, policy, community organizations, and state government. And the big three questions that we wanted to center on are: what should the goals for a post-economic recovery be? What foundation do women need for economic resiliency, not just now, but going forward? And what kind of training is needed to create paths to those goals? Here you can see some of the impact on their economic security through COVID. We're not going to focus on the problem because we all know that there's a problem. What we're focusing on today is a solution. So the first question we ask leaders throughout the state is, what should the goals be for an economic recovery? The big issue that came out loud and clear is policy reform around childcare. That's not an issue that we're tackling here, but at the state level is. But the two big issues that came up, as you can see, is training in high growth areas. 89% of leaders said that that is very important, as well as job placement and business startup assistance. The next question we ask is, what should the foundations for an economic resiliency be for our women? And again, we saw the impact of training in high growth areas. That's a theme that we see really throughout this report. But 2/3 of those surveyed said that retraining in high growth areas and higher paying jobs is incredibly important to bringing stability to the women of Connecticut. And this was followed by professional skills such as negotiation. Being able to pivot during a crisis really falls into that, and I want to hit on that in a moment. And then the other big theme is re-entry support, things like returnships. And I want to stress the issue of professional skills because it's incredibly challenging for anybody to find the steps, to take the steps to get back onto a path of economic and career recovery. It's enormously difficult, particularly in the pandemic when you can't meet with people face to face. And so we need to teach our women and men how to make transitions. How can they draw from experience in one industry and transition successfully into another? And if we don't teach Connecticutans how to do that, how to pivot, we really run the risk that they're going to fall further and further behind. The other big issue that's been a theme is transportation. So this is an issue that came up a lot because it's easy for those of us with cars to take for granted that we can drive someplace, but many under-resourced women either lack transportation or they cannot afford the time or money to travel someplace for training or interviews or whatever it might be. So that's something that transportation flexibility is something that we need to take into account when we look at creating a new path and program for the women of Connecticut. We then turned to young women, 18 to 24, and we said, what do we need to put into place to drive job placement among young women? The most important is, again, job training in high growth areas. No big surprise there, but 100% of those surveyed said that that's very important. This was followed closely behind with building pipelines to connect diverse women to employers. That's an incredibly important one because companies say that they want more diversity in their talent pipelines, and there's a real opportunity, I think, for the state, which is already doing some terrific work, to serve as that bridge from diverse talent that's being trained to the employers of Connecticut. Apprenticeships also is something that's very important for young women. When we look at women who are a little bit older, later in the stage, we find a couple different issues. Equally important is job training in high growth, but we see more emphasis in things like workforce training and training to start a business, also certification training, which is really becoming a big trend where we're seeing people get stackable certifications. So those are just some of the things that came out with the later stage women. Again, high training in high growth areas, workforce training, and also still connecting them to employers, incredibly important. One of the big issues that came up, we asked leaders about the barriers that women face. And I think this one is really interesting. First off, no surprise that childcare came up. But second is lack of access to venture capital. And you can see that this is right here. Nearly 60% said that lack of access to venture capital is a huge barrier. And just to give you a feel, in 2020, $150 billion in venture capital was awarded, but only 2% of that went to female founders and less than 1%, just about 0.5%, went to founders of color. So that's a big missed opportunity and something that I think Connecticut can really tap into. I also want to just mention that about 5 years ago, in the last couple years, we did a survey looking at college venture competition data. And what we found is that young women are an enormous untapped source of entrepreneurs and innovators in the state of Connecticut. We found that of the 1,000 young people who participated in college venture competitions at UConn, just 17% of them were women, but of the winning teams, 51% of the winning teams had a female founder and 35% of the first place teams had a female CEO. So really just underscoring the opportunity we have to dive earlier and train young women to become innovators and leaders of tomorrow. Now, let's turn to one more question that came up. We asked leaders, who do you think is responsible for this? The finger here was pointed to the government, but following closely behind is employers. And really what we want to talk about is a way to create collaboration across the state. There's already a lot of great work that's being done by the governor and the lieutenant governor and other leaders. Now let me turn to recommendations where we get to sort of the heart of this. Let's skip that. All right, so moving to recommendations, we decided to focus first on driving equity, which is a really big issue, and this came up in the conversation. So I just want to hit on some of the recommendations that came up there around removing bias in the hiring process, retaining and building talent diversity, and creating opportunities for upward mobility. And just to give you highlight a couple of those, in number one, removing bias in hiring, for example, companies can require that there be diversity in candidates when they're hiring. They also could use new alternative sources to recruit talent rather than the traditional sources they've been using. Next, in retaining and building talent, lots of recommendations there, but a couple of them are leveraging affinity or employee resource groups within companies to build more inclusivity. That's something that we do on a regular basis. Instituting mentors to integrate people of color into new corporate cultures that they might not be familiar with. And then lastly, creating opportunities for upward mobility. There's a couple big opportunities there. And by the way, I should mention that we are in the middle of briefing legislators. But for example, looking at compensation data to make sure that women of color are getting their fair share of promotions and bonuses. It's easy and often commonplace for people who are well networked or visible in a company to experience higher degrees of promotions and bonuses, but there's a lot of data that corporate leaders can be looking at to make sure that that's equitable across the board. There's also a big opportunity to increase face time between diverse employees and executive managers. Incredibly important to helping them move up the career ladder. Now I want to turn to just briefly some of the recommendations related to the report, and then I'm going to summarize sort of a key one. But we list a number of recommendations related to getting women back to work, including leveraging opportunities with the 2/3 of small businesses who might create experiential learning opportunities, internships, supporting women in the workplace, which again could include training of folks across the board on diversity. This one in particular, I think is very interesting, is calling on Connecticut employers to consider devoting a small percentage at least of their social impact or HR dollars specifically to retraining under-resourced young people in the state of Connecticut, because when they invest and we all invest, we benefit long-term through our economy. And then let me just go to, there's a couple other recommendations related to women-owned businesses. I think there's a big opportunity to further leverage the innovation labs throughout the state and to pair young people with leaders in the VC and the private equity space so that they can build their businesses. And then again, as we saw, the third bullet, increasing access to capital is just a huge opportunity. In closure, I just want to kind of give you our recommendation from Girls with Impact, which is a 4-point plan to get women back to work. And this is based on a lot of work that we've done with workforce agencies and also seeing what's been working in the private sector. And essentially what we're calling for is foundational business training that will give women not only confidence, but basic skills they need and can use in any workforce environment. Secondly, is specific industry training for the high growth areas in the state, which might be healthcare, advanced manufacturing, data innovation. The third piece of this is once the young women have foundational skills and some additional training, that they are getting actual work experience, which can involve apprenticeships or even job shadowings or what we call micro internships in either corporate environments or innovations or startup companies so that they're getting actual work experience before they start their job. And then lastly is providing one-on-one coaching as women are going through this so that they're entering their new career paths with some support and are not doing it alone. It's very challenging, as we all know, for anybody to transition to a new career, a new job, a new economic situation, and we want to harness the incredible strengths of Connecticut and our talent to help them do that and create long-term economic resiliency. With that, let me now turn it over to Treasurer Wooden to make some remarks.
Thank you, Jennifer, so much for your leadership with this work. It's certainly, it's been necessary, and it's more important than ever now that we are coming through this pandemic. I am very thrilled to be here on behalf of the state of Connecticut this morning to support this work and to highlight it. As our chief elected financial officer for the state, I'm charged with overseeing the assets of our pension systems, $43 billion. I'm charged with administering our $26 billion debt management program for the state, overseeing all of our cash transactions, and I sit on numerous boards and commissions, such as housing, dealing with student loans, dealing with aviation, venture capital, that impact the lifeblood of our state's economic growth. And so it is one of my priorities to ensure that our state is economically healthy And that's fundamentally why we're here today and what we're talking about, because we can't be healthy if women and girls in our state are not healthy. Now, while the credit standing in our state have made historic improvements throughout this pandemic, while we have had strong cash allowing us to really manage well as a state, the truth is the economic recovery that is occurring has been very much uneven, and which this report really talks about. To be blunt about it, thousands of people throughout our state are still hurting, and there has been a disproportionate impact on the impact of the pandemic and the economic downturn on women, and particularly women of color. And so that's why I want to thank Girls with Impact for their leadership in releasing these key findings, and not just the findings, because anecdotally, we all know about these issues. So it's great having the findings in the study, but the importance here is about the recommendations, the solutions on what we should be doing about it as a state, both government and the private sector and the not-for-profit sector working together. We know that our economy is stronger when everyone is thriving, and that's what we're trying to do. Connecticut needs to do better in getting women back to work, removing barriers, moving up the economic ladder, and getting women paid what they deserve. As the report highlights, one of the longstanding problems is, and this pandemic exposed it, but it's been a challenge, which is access to affordable, quality childcare. That's why I've been a big proponent of the Build Back Better legislation that passed in the House of Representatives, which has significant funding for childcare and also paid family medical leave. And so additionally, some of the other items highlighted in what you just heard is increasing the number of women-owned businesses in Connecticut and increasing access to venture capital. Something that, is, you heard the number 2%, is woefully inadequate, and we are missing out on so much of the opportunity and potential in our state and our nation with those numbers. As a sole trustee of our pension plans, gender diversity has been an important factor to us in considering the firms that we will invest with. There's empirical evidence. Years ago, this used to be debatable in some quarters, but there's been lots of studies that show that diverse companies, diverse management teams, diverse workforces, those companies actually outperform their peers. And so as a fiduciary, I think about it through that lens, right? This is not just, I think all of us would agree this is the right thing to do, and it's important in terms of equity. But as someone who's charged with investing and getting a return on that investment, I'm telling you, it's not only the right thing to do, but it's better for investment returns. And the same is true for our state in terms of investing in women and addressing these barriers and these reentry concerns. We have about $6.6 billion invested with women-owned firms, and I look forward to that number growing. Additionally, a gender diverse workforce signals an environment for talent. Top female candidates in particular care about gender diversity in the workplace, and it's very important to deciding. So I want top talent. Businesses in the state of Connecticut want top talent. These are the things we need to be focused on to attract and maintain that top talent. Another area of focus for my office has been making sure that women, including women of color, have a seat in the boardrooms where decisions are made. In October of 2019, we founded the Northeast Investors Diversity Initiative. This is a coalition of institutional investors from New Jersey to Maine, focused on companies headquartered in the Northeast and looking at their corporate boards for gender diversity, ethnic diversity, and really working in partnership and in a constructive way to promote that. Connecticut must remain forward-thinking in its approach and look to new opportunities to grow our economy, generate significant job creation, and offer a path to a strong and sustainable economic future. This report that you just heard about is foundational to us doing that. And so I just want to applaud all the partners in that work, Jennifer, for your leadership, and CBIA as well for being a part of this. And so thank you. On behalf of the state of Connecticut, we certainly thank you for your work and your commitment.
Hey, Chris.
Let's see if we can get him to stop.
Yeah.
So good morning, I'm Chris DiPentima, the president and CEO of the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, or CBIA. Jennifer, thanks for having us here, for partnering with us. CBIA, if you don't know, consists of thousands of member companies across the state of Connecticut. Many of them work with Girls in Impact and Eversource and BIC are on the board, and JP Morgan is on the CBIA board as well. And CBIA members employ nearly 400,000 people across the great state of Connecticut. You know, you all know about the workforce crisis that's going on right now in Connecticut, and it's a major issue. In fact, our recent survey that we did of businesses, the survey of Connecticut businesses in 2021, 80% of our membership talks about workforce being their biggest issue to growth this year. And I really applaud Jennifer and the Girls in Impact for what they're doing here. As Sean Wooden just mentioned, having the data is critical. And that's why we survey our members. And I know there's a lot of presumptions that are made around the workforce crisis, but now that we've got some data that from Jen's group, it's critical that we continue to build on this, because we got to stop making assumptions and start developing solutions based on real data. And what's interesting, if you put the data points together between the CBIA survey and the Girls with Impact survey, I think Jennifer mentioned the word training about 97 times when she was up here. And that's exactly what our employers talk about. They first talk about the inability to find applicants, so no one's applying for the job opening. But that second behind that is folks that do apply don't have the requisite skills. They don't have the requisite training. So whether it's women, people of color, those who are applying for these job openings, and there's more than 70,000 in Connecticut, many of them don't have requisite skills. So when you look at the two surveys and put them over each other, clearly we have a training skills issue. And that doesn't mean Connecticut hasn't spent money on training. We've spent tens of millions, maybe hundreds of $millions over the past 12 to 24 months on training, especially with, Sean mentioned, the ARPA money is coming in and more federal dollars coming in. So really, is it the lack of awareness of the training? Is it a lack of effectiveness of the training? Or is it both? And I really applaud the recommendations in the Girls in Impact study, which is around training and having more robust training and the right training that aligns the women and the candidates with the job opportunities. You'll hear from our affiliate, Ready CT, and the executive director, Shannon Merriman, about the pipeline program and how membership companies are invested in the pipeline program to make sure we have the right skill set for those graduating high school for the job openings. It's critical that we look at our available training programs too, and the ones that are currently in existence, and make sure folks are aware of them, both the individuals and the businesses. Because I agree with Jen, we have to upskill those folks in the business sector. And then lastly, just let me, I know we didn't talk about too much in the survey, but childcare is a big issue. And it was mentioned relative to the federal money, the Build Back Better program that's coming, the billions of dollars that have come to Connecticut. We completely agree. Childcare is holding back Connecticut from realizing our tremendous economic potential. And the public and private sector, now that we have this funding, really need to come together and identify the best solutions to use this funding to make sure we address the childcare issue. If we can't get women into the workforce, we can't grow the economy the way we need to in Connecticut. And we have a real potential here. You heard about credit ratings. We've got a great budget surplus going on right now. We've got record job openings. We need to get the people in place to fill those job openings. And we won't do that without solving the child care issue. So I know we want Connecticut to be a leader in the economic recovery, just like Connecticut has been a leader in addressing the healthcare crisis. CBI will be there partnering with the state, making sure the business community is there with our education institutions as well, so that we can rebuild Connecticut stronger and better than we were going into the pandemic. So thanks for having us here, and we look forward to implementing some of the solutions.
Good morning. First, let me just start by saying that Ready CT, which is an affiliate of CBIA, as Chris mentioned, is here with Girls with Impact because as we saw in the report, one of the things that was clearly illustrated is the need to focus on next generation leaders. And our organization, which is one that focuses on ensuring academic excellence and career-connected learning for all K through 12 public school students, specifically those attending school in vulnerable high-needs communities, see education as the engine of opportunity. Having organizations like Girls with Impact and Ready CT work together just makes sense. By leveraging education in modern and innovative ways that meet people where they are and understand the challenges that they're facing, we can get to girls across the state and make sure that they become those next generation leaders. Working together, we can tap into populations of young adults on the precipice of joining the workforce. We can advance solutions that promote economic mobility for young women so we can strengthen not just individuals, but families and entire communities. And we can offer students a chance to develop the core competencies, as Jennifer mentioned, that will make them successful in the workforce. Things like teamwork, problem solving, project and time management, communication skills, not to mention the technical skills needed around financial literacy, Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, all those things that we sort of take for granted. People just know, but we need to make sure we're explicitly teaching those skills to students, especially in the earlier age groups. And while we exclude no student, Ready CT does work particularly hard at recruiting girls, particularly girls of color, into the STEM fields. Connecticut has a huge demand for STEM talent. Information technology jobs have an average salary of over 6 figures and continue to rise with nearly 6,000 openings in the state right now. Advanced manufacturing is all about computational skills such as artificial intelligence and robotics, and employers cannot find the talent they need to optimize production. And in the midst of a global pandemic, our healthcare and biosciences sectors are in need of high-skilled workforce more than ever. Yet girls, and again, particularly girls of color, do not perceive themselves as having STEM habits of mind or even basic STEM aptitude. If we don't provide STEM awareness and skill-building opportunities early and often, nothing will change in this area. So thank you for your time today. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions regarding our specific programming and how the education engine must pick up speed in ways that position girls as next generation leaders across the state in our high growth, high demand industry areas. And there's a lot of work to be done, but we're excited to get to it.
Shana.
Jennifer, thank you for having me today. My name is Shana McPadden. I'm a banker with JPMorgan Chase here in Connecticut. But perhaps more importantly, I am a Connecticut native, and I've chosen to build my family and my business here in this state. I'm so proud to be standing here with Girls with Impact and all of these leaders talking about the recovery specifically around women in Connecticut. The report is critically important, and it comes at a time when we are still in the midst of fighting this COVID-19 pandemic. As the research in the study shows, we must invest and train people, especially women, right now, right here in Connecticut, to unlock as much future potential as possible. The risk of not investing in women today will have negative impacts on Connecticut, its economy, well into the future. With this report, however, we can begin to focus on what we need to do right now, today, to help women across our state. The most important part of this report is that it has actionable steps that we can take together as a community to help people across our state. And these steps are informed by the stakeholders who are here today and who have come to the table over the last couple of months to share diverse perspectives and experiences that they have. JPMorgan Chase has invested in this report, and we continue to invest in Girls with Impact because we know how critical it is for everyone to have equal opportunity to participate in our economy. Thank you to Girls with Impact, to the CBIA, and to Ready CT, and Treasurer Wooden for making this report so important and for its focus on diversity and exclusivity across our state. And thank you everyone today for celebrating the release of the study.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to mention, in case you're curious, what Girls with Impact does is we operate a live online mini MBA that's delivered over 10 weeks, and we've trained about 4,000 or 5,000 young people across the state, but most across the country, but mostly in Connecticut because we are headquartered here. Does anybody have any questions for any of our guests?
So for the 4-point plan that you mentioned about getting women back to work, what is the easiest way for a woman at home right now watching to access this or get the training that they need? Is there a website they need to go to, or how do they get this help?
We have most of that right now at Girls with Impact, and we serve women 14 to 24. So anybody who is under-resourced can go through our 10-week mini MBA at no cost. We would like some additional funding and support to add on the coaching component and the high skills training, because there is a cost to deliver that. So that's something we're having conversations with leaders as we speak, and I suspect there's a good chance we'll be hearing more to come. And then, as the treasurer mentioned, there are some federal dollars coming down, and we're hoping that maybe we can leverage some of that to either, if it's us or working in partnership, build out the full 4 pieces. Because we've seen that in the private sector, actually, that when people, particularly people of color, have training, but they have a coach working alongside them, it definitely increases the chances of them landing in a paid job. And we do have the follow-on mentoring piece after the academy, but there's just a couple other pieces to further build that out. So they could go to girlswithimpact.org, and then Women with Impact, I think they can jump to that site, which is for the 18 to 24-year-old.
And how about someone over the age of 24?
One thing that we will be talking about is maybe leveraging our platform to do that, because certainly we talked about older mid-career women. There are some efforts going on. There are workforce agencies, and we are working with some of those as well, hoping to do more of that. So that's one source. I think, and I think, Chris, you said it, because we work with workforce agencies, I think a lot of people are not familiar with some of the resources out there. Another one that came up in our conversation is that community colleges or elsewhere, there are these ancillary services like childcare, like help with finances, et cetera, and people are just not aware of it. I would love to embark on an effort not only for the 4-point plan, but to really increase awareness, because otherwise people are sitting in their homes and, are really at a loss of what to do. And it's just so difficult to take those steps and know what to do to land in a new career. So we are going to work with leaders, hopefully, to do that. That's our hope, very soon.
Yeah, if I could just add, for women over 24, there are regional workforce development councils, and that's an area of focus for this state. I know it's been important to the governor, it's been important to me, and there's a great program in southeastern Connecticut along those lines, not focused on women. I just happen to have met a lot of women in the program getting retooled and retrained. We have thousands of jobs coming online, and just for this purpose, some folks in southeastern Connecticut. We have subs that are going to be built. We need advanced manufacturing skill sets. And I've met so many people that have come through this program, and it's a partnership with the community colleges in that area, with Electric Boat and the whole supply chain pipeline, providing the skills in the training, but also providing a job to go directly into, and it has a 94% retention rate. And people who have gone from bartending, and this is not hyperbole, bartending to being newly skilled for jobs that exist. And so I would really encourage looking at these workforce development councils in different regions of the state.
And they'd be able to probably just Google it and find your local one.
Yes.
I remember that, yes. There's some efforts around very specific industries that I think are taking place right through the governor's workforce efforts. There are some of those.
And in fact, just coincidentally, Kelly Valeris, who is a small business owner who took over in terms of the governor's workforce development council, but she was a participant in terms of hiring, as a woman-owned business owner, hiring folks coming through that program. And so it does work.
So I suspect you'll see more of those specific industry trainings as well.
Yes.
And what are the high growth areas that you're seeing right now?
They are biomedical, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and treasury. You might want to add to some of those, technology innovation. I think those hit on most of the big ones. Energy, oh, green energy, that's the other
Yes.
one, yep. Anything else? Okay, thank you so much for joining us, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I got something. Give me the signal.
I'm sorry.
Then I was like, oh, yeah, it's presentation. Thank you. Okay.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming.
Data videos before I can report.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very well.
In your face. So you're.
Yeah. What was the name of the organization that it's professors across the Northeast?
We're doing stories, right? And we're going to put that to membership.
Yeah.
So we do daily news.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.